Ladies and gentlemen, let me hit you with the truth right from the jump. A storm is brewing on the world stage, and it ain't just about politics, it's about pride, power, and position. When a man threatens to slap a 20% tariff on a country, you gotta ask yourself, why now? Why them? What's the real story? Because, trust me, nothing in politics is ever as simple as they make it sound on the news. Trump's 25% tariff threat isn't just about trade, it's about power and control. When you hear that number 25%, it sounds like economics. It sounds like a move to balance trade sheets, to protect jobs, to make imports fair. But beneath the surface, it's much deeper. It's not just about the price tags on goods moving between two countries. It's about who gets to sit at the head of the table. You see, tariffs are not only economic weapons, they are psychological ones. They send a message. And the message here isn't, we want more money. It's, don't forget who's in charge. For decades, the U.S. has used its economic weight as leverage to keep other nations in line. It's the old school bully tactic, dressed up in political language. And when Trump drops a tariff threat like this, he's not only targeting products, he's targeting pride. He's saying, don't get too comfortable. Don't think you're rising too fast without us noticing. That's why it's about power. Now let's look at the control side of it. India has been expanding rapidly in ways the U.S. can't ignore. Technology, pharmaceuticals, defense, and even global influence through culture and diplomacy. This growth threatens the U.S. narrative of being the undisputed leader of the free world. So when tariffs are thrown on the table, they become a leash, an attempt to keep India tethered, reminding them that America can still pull the strings. It's like saying, yes, you're growing, but remember, we still hold the switch that can make life more expensive for you. And that kind of move isn't about building healthy trade, it's about maintaining dominance. The U.S. doesn't want to see India step in a place where it no longer has to bend to outside pressure. Because if India becomes fully independent on the world stage, if India can call its own shots without fear of repercussions, then America loses a piece of the end for decades. Think about it this way, if it were really just about trade, there would be quiet negotiations, backroom deals, adjustments in supply chains. But a public 25% tariff threat, that's not economics, that's theater. That's meant to rattle markets, rattle leaders, and remind everybody who's still flexing the loudest. And that's the real truth. This isn't simply a financial decision. It's a play for psychological control, for the ability to say, what can still dictate the pace of your rise? It's not the balance sheet that scares America. It's the thought of India standing tall without needing their permission. That's why this tariff talk carries weight far beyond trade. It's about power, it's about control, and it's about who gets to write the rules in the years to come. The U.S. feels pressure because it's losing contested dominance on the world stage. For most of modern history, America has enjoyed a position where its word carried the most weight. If the U.S. made a move, the rest of the world adjusted. That dominance was rooted not only in military strength, but also in economic superiority, cultural influence, and technological leadership. After World War II, America was the global standard. Every nation with ally or rival had to measure itself against U.S. power. But history doesn't stay still. New players rise, new economies boom, and suddenly the stage that once belonged to one actor becomes crowded with fresh competitors. India's rapid ascent is one of those shifts, and it's making America feel something it hasn't felt in a long time. Pressure. That pressure comes from watching the balance of power tilt. India is not only one of the fastest growing economies, but it's also a democracy with strategic geographic positioning, a powerhouse of human capital, and a nation that can build alliances on its own terms. For America, that means the script is changing. Where once they could dictate trade, defense, and diplomatic conditions without much pushback, now they are negotiating with a nation that has leverage. That leverage unnerves them. It challenges the very foundation of the dominance they've grown comfortable with. And when dominance is challenged, fear creeps in. The fear of losing control, of no longer being the unquestioned leader, of being forced to share power in a way they haven't had to in generations. The 25% tariff threat and other aggressive postures aren't about protecting American industries. They are reactions to this deeper anxiety. It's America trying to slow down a future where it's no longer the sole voice at the table. When you've been the center of gravity for so long, watching the world's attention shift, even partially, feels like a loss. The pressure isn't psychological. It's the realization that other nations are now writing their own stories, building their own influence, and not waiting for America's approval. India's growth, innovation, and independence embody that shift. And here's the reality: dominance doesn't last forever. History shows that every empire, every global leader eventually faces competition. The U.S. is entering that chapter right now, and India is one of the clearest signals of it. That's why America feels the heat. It's not just about dollars, trade deficits, or tariffs. It's about the fading comfort of being the uncontested number one, and the new reality of sharing the stage in a nation that refuses to play second fiddle anymore. Tariffs are being used as a tool to remind India that America still wants to be the top dog. On the surface, a tariff looks like a financial adjustment, just a tax slapped on goods moving from one country to another. But in reality, tariffs are signals. They are messages dressed up as economics. When America threatens or enforces tariffs, especially on a country like India, it isn't only about balancing trade deficits or protecting local industries. It's about sending a loud reminder of who still claims the authority in the global hierarchy. It's a symbolic move as much as it is a financial one, and symbols matter in international politics. A 25% tariff isn't just a policy, it's a warning shot. We're still in charge, don't forget it. For decades, the United States has relied on tools like tariff sanctions and trade restrictions not only to manage its own economy, but also to project dominance. It's a way of flexing without firing a shot, a way of saying, we can make life harder for you if we want to. That kind of posture is meant to reinforce the image of America as the referee of global trade, the one nation that sets the rules others must follow. When Trump talks about tariffs against India, he's pulling that play straight out of the old handbook. Use economic pressure to establish psychological dominance. The idea is simple: if you can make another country bend, even a little, you prove you're still the top dog. But here's the twist. India isn't bending the way America expects. India has grown into a nation that knows its worth, and it recognizes tariffs for what they really are, not just an economic penalty, but a political tool designed to test their resolve. And the more India pushes back, the clearer it becomes that tariffs no longer carry the same fear factor they once did. Instead of folding, India is looking for new partners, new markets, and new alliances. That means the very tool America is used starting to expose its own limitations. The truth is, when a dominant power feels the need to remind others of its position, it's often a sign that dominance is slipping. Tariffs, in this sense, are like raising your voice in an argument. You don't do it when you're fully in control. You do it when you feel like you're losing ground. America's use of tariffs against India reveals more than just a strategy. It reveals an anxiety. It shows that the U.S. is aware India is rising, aware its influence is spreading, and aware that the top dog status is no longer guaranteed. The tariff threat then isn't really about goods and products. It's about image, ego, and the fight to hold on to a position of global leadership that is being challenged in real time. India holds leverage and isn't folding under U.S. pressure. It knows its worth. For too long, the world expected India to be a nation that complied rather than competed. That time is over. India is standing tall because it finally recognizes the full extent of its strength: economic, demographic, technological, and strategic. When America throws tariff threats on the table, it expects panic, a scramble, a rush to appease. But India isn't playing by those old rules anymore. Instead, it's calmly reminding the world that leverage flows both ways, and it has plenty of cards to play. One of the strongest pieces of India's leverage comes from its market size. With over 1.4 billion people, India is not just a country, it's a continent-sized opportunity. Every major global company, from tech giants to pharmaceutical firms, wants access to that market. The U.S. can threaten tariffs, but it also knows that American businesses don't want to lose their foothold in India. That puts India in a position of quiet confidence. It can signal to the world that if America makes trade more difficult, there are other nations more than willing to step in the gap. Europe, Russia, China, and even smaller regional powers are eager to deepen ties with a rising India. That global attention gives India options, and options are leverage. Then there's technology and talent. The U.S. economy, especially in sectors like Silicon Valley, has leaned heavily on Indian minds, CEOs, engineers, developers, and innovators. Indian talent is woven into the fabric of American success stories. That interdependence means America can't afford to push too hard because the very workforce that sustains its own industries is connected to India. Add to that India's growing dominance in pharmaceuticals, IT, and defense manufacturing, and you start to see why India doesn't buckle when tariffs are mentioned. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Awareness of what it brings to the table, and awareness of how deeply the world now needs it. And perhaps the most powerful leverage of all is India's refusal to be cornered diplomatically. Unlike in the past, India is no longer aligning itself blindly with one bloc or one superpower. Instead, it's striking strategic partnerships on its own terms. From the Quad alliance with the US, Japan, and Australia to trade talks with Europe, to defense deals with Russia, India has built a web of relationships that ensure it is never isolated. That's why American pressure tactics don't carry the weight they used to. If the U.S. tightens the screws, India can simply pivot to another partner, another opportunity. This is what knowing your worth looks like on the global stage. India isn't folding under pressure because it finally understands that it doesn't have to. It has the resources, the people, the alliances to walk into any negotiation with its head held high. And when a nation knows its value, it stops reacting out of fear and starts responding with strength. That's why America's threats may sound loud, but India's silence, its steady refusal to bow, speaks louder. The real story: America fears India's future potential as a competitor, not just its present position. Right now, India is already a major player. Its economy is growing faster than most. Its people are shaping industries across the globe, and its influence is spreading into technology, diplomacy, and culture. But what unsettled the United States isn't only where India stands today, it's where India is headed tomorrow. America sees a trajectory, a momentum, and it knows if that momentum continues unchecked, India will not just be a partner in global affairs, it will be a rival. That vision of the future is what drives the anxiety behind tariff threats and political pressure. It's not about punishing India for what it has achieved. It's about trying to slow down what India. The truth is, India has all the ingredients that point to long-term dominance. It has the numbers. 1.4 billion people, most of them young, educated, and hungry for opportunity. It has the talents and innovators and entrepreneurs who are not only thriving at home, but leading some of the biggest corporations abroad. It has the economy. Resilient, diversified, and increasingly self-sufficient. And it has a government and a society determined to position India as a nation that makes decisions for itself rather than taking cues from others. To America, that mix looks less like a friendly partner, more like a future competitor who can stand toe to toe. And when you've been the number one for decades, the thought of someone else rising to challenge your position is not easy to accept. This is why the tariff threats carry such a sharp edge. It's less about balancing today's trade and more about setting limits for tomorrow's growth. It's a way of saying, don't get too far ahead. Because if India continues at its current pace, the U.S. knows it won't just be another emerging power, it will be a defining one. It will be shaping global policies, global markets, and global narratives in ways that don't necessarily align with America's priorities. That's the fear, losing not just market share, but influence, voice, and the ability to dictate the rules. And let's be clear, India's future potential is unique because it doesn't have to copy anyone else's model. It doesn't need to America or the next China. It's carving its own path, one that blends democracy, scale, innovation, and cultural influence. That independence makes India even more of a competitor in the eyes of the U.S. because it can't be boxed in or easily predicted. So when we talk about pressure, tariffs, and threats, what we're really looking at is America fronting the possibility of sharing the stage with a nation that could one day outshine it. The present is already powerful, but the future, that's what makes America nervous.